Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the podcast. Do you know what? I just looked down at my phone here. It's 111. It's 11 minutes past 1 at the time of recording this. I love that. Angel numbers, divine guidance. I'm in the right place. I'm really excited to share today's podcast episode and this conversation with you. It's conversation, let's say, with you all today. But firstly, welcome. Hi, I'm Evie, life and confidence coach and business mentor, and you are listening to the Unstoppable You podcast. Hi, come on into my little podcasting studio, to my coaching office, to this room that is over the side. And those of you who are on Zoom calls with me well, no, I've been hoarding all of this stuff for our new renovations. We've got light shades. We've got a stack of bathroom tiles, another stack of bathroom tiles. I've got heated towel rails. I've got my beautiful sound bowls. There's lots of stuff going on here, but we're trying to keep that to the side. So welcome into my office. Now, do you know what? I feel like this is a conversation that I've been wanting to have for a while, and I asked myself this question because I pulled myself an oracle card and it said, it should share your voice, and it said, coming out of the shell, coming out of the cave, self-expression, essentially. I'm paraphrasing there. And I wrote down on my notes here, how do I want to express myself on the podcast today? And that led to this big deep dive into what did I want to talk about, like what's coming up for me personally. What did I want to, what are my thoughts? What are my things that I wanted to share about coaching, about personal development? What are some of the themes? What is this all really about? And yeah, anyway, it's led to this one, I think, hopefully a wonderful conversation about the realness of life coaching, of personal development work, of being in the arena, of growing a service-based coaching or healing or space holding business, and just the realities, I think. And I think there's going to be some real great nuggets around, and yeah, some wisdom around high achievers, around go-getters, because many of you will be if you're here listening to this or watching this, and also about self-esteem and worthiness. And these are topics that I dearly love, and I hope hopefully we'll get to the end and it all makes sense and it's a cohesive episode, but we'll see. As always, we're hitting record, we're going for it. Okay, first and foremost, I want to share a quote, and today's quote is from this beautiful book here. If you can see that watching the YouTube video, this is the Daily Mantras to Ignite Your Purpose. It's a Lisa Messenger book, and it's these beautiful nuggets of wisdom that each and every day there's a new quote or a new mantra to consider. So today is the 12th of August at the time of recording this, and this is today's quote. It goes like this: make the decision. Do the thing. The universe will reward you for your bravery. Maybe today, maybe a week from now, but until you make the change, the universe is keeping your next round on ice. That's by Sarah Nelly. I'm going to read that again. Make the decision, do the thing. The universe will reward you for your bravery. Maybe today, maybe a week from now, but until you make the change, the universe is keeping your next round on ice. Boom. Love it. Some wisdom, some inspiration for you today. Okay. So I was thinking, like I said, about this beautiful podcast episode and what I wanted to share and talk about. And I was also thinking that I wanted to share that I've got a final 2 spaces to work with me this year in one-to-one coaching, in my private one-to-one mentoring and coaching space. This could be life coaching, this could be business coaching, this could be a blend of life and business coaching. And there is just final 2 spots left at the time of recording this, August 2025, before I go on maternity leave at the very end of this year. So if you're interested, do reach out and let me know. DM me on Instagram, send me an email. All the details are in the show notes or in the description below. But I was thinking about, why does this really matter? And there was also this, and I'm going to be completely honest, brutally honest here and share this as well. Brutally honest, completely honest, and share that I was also watching a little video from, I would say, a very successful coach, space holder, online teacher. And she's built an incredible business, big following, etc. And she has, from what I understand, deciding to pull back a whole lot from her business and be the predominant stay-at-home mama and carer for her children, her young children. And it was really interesting because I just felt myself welling up with tears. And if you've listened to this podcast for a while now, you might want to go back and listen to this episode if you're keen. The very start of this year, the very start of 2025, I shared a really vulnerable episode about one of the things that I feel really challenged by. And what was coming up for me at the start of the year was the challenge essentially, and it still very much is a challenge for me, is this dance of my two loves and passions in life, and that is mothering and being a really beautiful mama and present mama for my babies, and growing really, hopefully, really beautiful little bubbas, just really nurturing and supporting them in the best way that I possibly can so that they can grow up into the most insanely beautiful humans and, yeah, live the lives that they want to live and be of service to the world and give back. Like, that's really important to me. And also, I am so passionate about life coaching, about holding space for other people, about mentoring them, about really supporting them to be the best humans that they can possibly be, to overcome the doubt, the wobbles, the inner critic, the unworthiness stories, any of the stuff that's holding them back, and ultimately come back to their soul, to feel really connected to their true self, to their most authentic selves, and live a life that's true to them, and live a life of meaning and fulfillment and purpose. And that is so important to me. And I have these two loves, and it's such a wonderful quote unquote problem to have, where you genuinely love the things that you do in your life and they genuinely love the responsibilities and the choices that you've made in this beautiful life that you've created. And also it's a dance. And anyway, it brought me to tears just listening to her beautiful story, because she was coming home to her truth and she was talking about what she really wants to do and her decision around this. And I was like, wow, it's a really beautiful, brave move. And I loved that she was being so discerning to herself. And it made me reflect on my own journey and my own choices, obviously, as these things often do. You know, you'll hear something or see something and it will hit something for you, and it brings up some emotions in a wonderful way and in a good way. And it was really insightful for me, because it's helped me come back to my truth. And it's, I think sometimes it would be, and certainly my brain tells me this often, is that it would be easier to do one thing or the other and not do the dance of both, and not blend motherhood and business and vice versa. But ultimately, I know my truth is a version of both. And so it reminded me of why I became a coach in the first place. It reminded me of what this is all about. And there was another reminder that I had just this morning. My beautiful mama has just recently fractured her wrist. And obviously she's had surgery on it. She's been in a car. She's come out of the car. She's in a splint. She's doing all her rehab. She's doing all her hand therapy exercises. And if you're new around here, don't know me too well, I was a physio prior to a coach. And there was, she was talking about how it's so challenging, and how there's something huge about any kind of physical disability or any kind of physical challenge or injury or anything that happens, right? And that we would see in the physio clinic, that we would see in the hospital, in the physio departments, where there's some rehab involvement, where there's some recovery. And she was talking about how challenging that is on many levels. And I reminded her and I said, I totally get that and I totally understand that. And that was, a huge reason why I wanted to become a coach and wanted to come, essentially, I initially wanted to bring in more of these mindset and psychology principles into my physiotherapy work, because I just saw a huge need for it. Almost all of my clients, almost all of my patients, as a physio, had some kind of psychological influence on their recovery, on their injury, on their rehab, on the journey that they were on, and the mindset and how they felt, and the emotional regulation, and processing all of that stuff and going through the challenges that the physical injury or medical incident or whatever it might have been, was how that was influencing them. And it reminded me of like, this is why I want to do what I want to do. And that there's so much more than just the physical rehab and the exercises, to healing, to overcoming challenges, to growing through that. And it takes grit and tenacity, and it takes work. And it's also so important to have that love and support and that person on your team, on your side, and working through that stuff that comes up for you. And yeah, that was a big reason why I wanted to become a coach in the first place. More on my journey in previous episodes, but that was a big part of it. And it also, when I was thinking about that video earlier and thinking about these final 2 spaces and selling these final 2 spaces of one-to-one coaching with me this year and mentoring, I was thinking about like, this just matters to me so much. And why is this so important to me? And it genuinely brought tears to my eyes, thinking about why I love this work so much is because it changed my life. Because it literally changed my life, because I obviously did some therapy work, and so much of my coaching work is really heavily based on psychology and therapy principles as well. And I just think it matters so much because it's the life-changing work that if you had met me 10, 15 years ago, I would have appeared really well put together on the outside, of course. Many people would have said I probably was confident and really capable. And there's a lot of truth in all of that, yes. But I certainly didn't feel that way on the inside. And even the other day, I was talking about this with Brooke about another example, but the story was irrelevant. But I reminded him of those moments when I would come home and it would be the evening time and it was just him and I would feel so anxious and I would be overcome with anxiety, and I had to sort myself out, quote unquote, and I learned so many wonderful practices and tools and rituals that really supported me through that. And it just reminded me of these moments of my journey and how far I've come. And that has come from coaching, has come from my commitment to myself and my own personal development, and my own journey, my own growth, and my own learning and lessons and expansion for myself as a human. And just how incredible it feels on the inside, and how much it's genuinely changed my external world. Like, we certainly would not live in this house if it wasn't for that. I certainly wouldn't be a coach myself if it hadn't been for that. I certainly wouldn't have the business that I have. And I certainly wouldn't feel the way I feel in a day-to-day business. Like, all of these things has changed significantly because of the work that I did on myself. And I have to credit so much of that to personal development, to life coaching work, to psychology work that I've done on myself. And it's life-changing. It truly is life-changing. And I think about some of the clients that I've had over the years, and I think about the work that we've done, and I think about, some of some of my OG girls who were with me at the very, very start, some of them we've stayed in contact with so much recent, and then others more recently, touch base and just hearing where they're at and how they are, and like recognizing how far they've come, the work that we did, back in life coaching many years ago, and how that's transpired and how that's played out in their lives, and how, where they are now was like a distant dream, or maybe even not even part of their awareness and their vision at the time. But through that beautiful commitment to work on themselves, they've created this extraordinary life for themselves, and a life of meaning, and a life of service, and a life of authenticity. And that's just so incredible. It's so incredible, and it gets me so excited, and I feel so deeply proud of those women, and so deeply grateful and deeply honored to do this work. And yeah, I think some of the big things, and I even had a conversation with a client about worthiness this morning, and I wanted to bring this into the conversation today and share some wisdom and some ideas for you all that I think will be really supportive. But I think one of the biggest underlying things that almost every client works on when they come into my world is how they feel about themselves, about their self-esteem, about their level of confidence, about their self-worth, about their deservingness, and how that underpins almost everything that we do in our lives and our businesses, what we feel that we're worthy and deserving of, what opportunities we put ourselves out there for, what things we say yes to, what, how we choose to live our lives essentially is so underpinned by so much of that work. And so I wanted to really speak to that and offer some insights there. So the first thing I think is, many of you who are here listening to this podcast will be high achievers. What I mean by that is that you deeply care about who you are, the way that you show up in the world, the work that you do in the world, the way that you lead, the way that you serve, the way that you teach, or whatever it is that you do. And you have high expectations and standards for yourself, and often for others as well. But sometimes I think, and these conversations, these topics will be interwoven as well. Sometimes I think there's a double-edged sword here, where to be a high achiever is, I think, an exceptional thing. I think is a wonderful thing. I'm there with you, and I love that about you, and don't change that about you. And I think that often we can be hard on ourselves. Often we can have these high expectations of ourselves, and I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. I actually think having high standards is a really good thing. And I actually think that it helps us show up and be incredible humans. It supports you to continue to grow and commit to yourself and your growth. As I said to my, based on my experiences and story as well, like that's been a huge part of my journey, and something I'm so deeply proud of as well. And that's because I've wanted to have those high standards. I have had those high standards for myself and wanted to continue to grow and to meet them. So I think that it's not necessarily a bad thing. But what happens is, when we're overly hard on ourselves as high achievers, as women, as go-getters, as people that care and give a shit, essentially, and maybe there's an underlying current of unworthiness for whatever reason. We'll get to that in a moment. But what can happen is that often when we're overly hard on ourselves, it really comes from when we're making unfair judgments or comparisons that are unfair, that aren't true. So, for example, we might be comparing ourselves now to another version of ourselves when our situation was completely different. For example, I can share this is one recently that my mind's come up for me, and I'm like, see you there. And that is like comparing myself now and my capacity now, and my ability to train and my fitness and all of those sorts of things to my first pregnancy. And I'm comparing myself to a previous version of myself some years ago, but my life was completely different then. I didn't have another daughter. I didn't have a nearly 3-year-old to look after. My business looked different. My capacity was so different. And so, of course, that influences it. So it's an unfair comparison, right? So it might be that you're comparing yourself to a different version of yourself, or a different season, for example. Or it can be that you're comparing yourself to someone else. And again, it's an unfair comparison because you don't have the same experiences, you don't have the same capacity or commitments, you don't have the same desires or wants or goals in this life. You're comparing yourself to another person, and it's completely different. You're comparing apples to oranges, and you just really can't make that comparison. And that's when we can wrongly put ourselves down. And the other thing that I see happen, so we can overly or wrongly judge ourselves, or be overly hard on ourselves when we're comparing to other people or different versions of ourselves. And that's an unfair comparison. And therefore, it's always going to be a lose-lose scenario, because you just can't compare, and you're never going to match up to that other version or that other person or whatever. And also that we can make it mean something bad about ourselves. So something might happen. Someone might say a remark or say something not great, and we take that personally, that we take that on as our own truth, or something that means something about ourselves. And remember, life is all about meaning. So we don't have the life, like, we're not experiencing life. We're experiencing the life that we focus on. And more importantly, we're experiencing the life that we make it mean. It's really about the emotions, the meaning that we give things, that is our emotional response to it, is the life that we actually live. So for example, it's like two things, the exact same situation could happen to two separate people, and we could make it mean something completely different. One person can make it mean something good, one person can mean something bad, and therefore it gives you a different emotional response to that and a different experience of that situation, right? And so that's where our mind is playing some tricks and some games on us. There is when we make it about ourselves, wrongly about ourselves, or we make it mean something bad about ourselves, which puts us down, which takes away from our feelings of worthiness, of deservingness, and of our value, essentially. So that's what I really wanted to share there about worthiness. And obviously there's more to that. There's layers to this conversation, of course, and this work. And for some of you, it may be going back to do some of the untangling, unraveling yourself from previous past experiences that have caused you to create a belief system, a story of unworthiness, of not enoughness, of not good enoughness, whatever that version is for you. And so partly it can be untangling and reprogramming that, but also just the high achiever in you, just be mindful of where we're making those false comparisons that we just can't make, that aren't healthy, and also where we make it mean something bad about ourselves, where we're taking over responsibility, or we're making it mean something about us when it's not about us, or it doesn't necessarily mean what we're making it mean, if that makes sense. I also just wanted to share here a bit about like I shared there around, we experience the life that we focus on, and where focus goes, energy flows. Beautiful quote. And it's so cliche, but it's so true. And all of us will be focusing on a version of these. We'll be focusing on either the past, the present, or the future. Many people focus on the past, and so we're living in the past. We're living in those stories that we're telling ourselves, and sometimes it's not always the truth. It's the perception of those things, which can rob us of joy and happiness and we make things mean something. For the high achievers in us, many of you will be focusing on the future, of the achievements of getting to that goal, getting to that dream, getting to that vision. But what happens is that in both those scenarios, we lose sight, and we don't allow ourselves to experience the joy that only lives in the present moment. It can be really easy to be hard on ourselves as high achievers, as I mentioned there. But I think, and it's good to be hard on ourselves, and it's good to want more for ourselves and strive. And I love that about you, right? But remember, it's about not overly hard on ourselves. And also reminding ourselves to be in the present moment and allow ourselves to experience the joy of the present moment, to celebrate what already is, to celebrate what we already are. And that is so important. So, so important. And so that would be one of my pieces of wisdom for you. The anecdote to many of this is to be able to have gratitude and appreciation for what already is, to really allow yourself to be in the present moment, to soak up the joy, the magic, the energy, the excitement, the joy, the happiness of the present moment, and to not either be living in the past or always living in the future. And that can be a really wonderful, and to recognize yourself and to celebrate everything that you are, everything that you're going for, just how far you've come, because that can be such a wonderful way to rebuild more self-esteem and more worthiness. And it's not about toxic positivity. It's not about only focusing on the positive things. It's really, gratitude and appreciation comes from real life lived experiences. And it's about seeing it for what it really is and recognizing yourself. So not only just focusing on, what's wrong, what's missing, the bad, but also focusing on what's going right. In any given moment, what's wrong is always going to be available to you. And exactly the same as in any given moment, what's right is always available to you. So what you focus on, what you choose to give energy to and highlight, focus on, feel, is so important. And so this is why presence is so wonderful. This is why gratitude is so wonderful. And this is why choosing what you focus on, choosing the meaning that you make things, is so important to how you feel on a day-to-day basis. And remember, your emotions are your day-to-day experience. Your emotions are your home. Your emotions are your experience of life. So really choosing those wisely and thinking about some of those things we've talked about today about what do I focus on, past, present, or future? How can I be more in the present? Instead of being overly hard on myself, how can I recognize and celebrate myself in the present moment? How can I, really build more worthiness and build more sensations and feelings of self-esteem, of confidence, of belief in myself by recognizing, hey, I navigated that really challenging thing and I survived it, and here I am to tell the tale. And I'm so proud of myself for that. Those are wonderful things about how to actually physically and tangibly build that. So I hope that you take some wisdom from that and some love from that and gratitude from that, and go forth, go well. Remember, there's final 2 one-to-one coaching spots with me. Would love to support you. And if any of the conversation today sparked something in you, reach out. Let's have a conversation about it. Would love to support you. And yeah, go well, high achiever. I love you. I see you. And I can't wait to be back with more beautiful podcast episodes in time to come.